1. Okay, so I'm going to relate an experience I had when I was young that has ended up making an impact on my entire life. I've never posted about it anywhere and haven't really talked to a lot of people about it. I really want to hear what people have to think about this. When I was 2, my mom married and we moved into a house on the edge of a small bush in a small town. Today, even just thinking about this house gives me the creeps. Last summer I took my fiancé there, and as soon as we left, he told me how creepy he felt the house and that whole part of town was. I was a pretty quiet kid and enjoyed playing alone in my room. Around this time, I developed what my mom called an invisible friend. I named him Casper, and said he was a little boy that lived in the walls and the closet. My mom would hear me talking to him a lot over the years. When I was 5, I saw something that scared the shit out of me. I was with my mom in the basement, which was semi-finished. There was a sort of sitting room, along with Bob's workshop, some storage rooms, and my parents' bedroom. My mom sent me into the bedroom for something. The light was off. I remember entering the doorway and reaching for the light switch, when I saw something standing on the other side of the bed. It looked to be about 7 to 8 feet tall, and draped with cloth and wearing a hood. It was semi-transparent and smoky white. It felt incredibly ominous. Of course, I completely lost it. I ran to my mom, screaming that there was something bad in the bedroom. She held me while I cried and tried to tell me it was probably just the dog. The dog is a Jack Russell. Nice try though, Mom. I refused to ever go into the basement again. After that night came the night terrors. I was absolutely terrified at night, like scared out of my wits. I would curl up into a ball and pull the covers over my head. No matter how much pain I was in, or if I couldn't breathe, I was too scared to move an inch. When I did sleep, I would wake up screaming. I remember after this had gone on for a few months, my mom sitting on the edge of my bed, crying from stress, because I refused to let her leave and turn the lights out, and refused to sleep. My mom split with Bob when I was around 7, and we moved out. For the next few years, I would have to go back to the house twice a month for visitations. I always had a really hard time getting to sleep. I still refused to go into the basement. I'm now 25 years old. I'm still scared of the dark. And I still have night terrors. Looking back on this incident, it still gives me chills. A little more background, which is interesting but may not be of any importance. Bob and his father are high-up members of the Freemasons and have a super creepy vibe about them. Bob especially is just really weird. He was also both verbally and physically abusive to my mom, and later to me. Any idea what I saw? And why it had such a huge impact on me? I still get the creeps thinking about it. I haven't been in that house for years though. Bob still lives there. But being in the forest in that area still freaks me out so much it feels like I'm watching a horror movie. Anyone else ever experienced anything like this? 2. If anyone can provide similar experiences, information, etc., please do. I'll start with a little background info here. I am 100% a believer. However, I am not very educated on a lot of this wide, diverse subject. The house I live in, my grandma's, has had 3 people die in it, that I know of anyway, which are my grandma's husband, his mother, and his stepfather. I, as well as my significant other, have saw orbs all over this house. We both have also saw figures, mostly a black figure of a human. A couple of times we saw white. Significant other has also seen a detailed man, which he described as a rotting person who told him to leave me alone, and that he was unwelcome here. Nothing of that sort has happened since. That has also been a long time back. I've also had a black figure come towards me in bed while I was alone. I heard something, but didn't see anything. I thought to myself, show yourself. That's when the figure appeared at the end of the bed, reaching its arms out as if to get me. I blinked, and it was gone. Scared the fuck out of me. I ended up having a panic attack. It may be worth noting that there is a cemetery behind my house. I don't know much about it. It's not very well kept. But people do tend to it every now and then. There is also a noise both me and my significant other hear. No one else who lives here has heard it. Which I don't see how. It used to happen all the time, multiple times a day. We would check everywhere and there was always nothing. It started to happen very seldom, until we brought that to attention. Now it happens every once in a while. It sounds similar to a full can of soda being sat down on a table. So anyways, here's what's up. Lately, for about the last 2 months, little pieces of glass start showing up. I think nothing of it. Just assume someone, or one of the cats, broke something and all the pieces just didn't get cleaned up. I find more glass, more and more. My significant other as well. We literally have found it in every room of the house. I was sitting on my bed and looked down to find a piece on my leg, just laying there. I hadn't handled anything glass, so it made no sense. We actually have found a few pieces in the bed. I haven't been harmed from it though. Significant other has stepped on a piece, once or twice though. Just a poke, nothing really. It most often showed up in the floor, but has also been found on tables. Literally, it just appears, it won't be there. We can go back 10 minutes later and there's glass. We mentioned it to my grandma, but she thinks we're overreacting. Weird because she believes in this shit too. We always just throw away the glass and go on about our day. It has started to appear a lot less often now. The glass also is always clear glass, but sometimes some of the pieces appear to have etch markings. Nothing defined. Ridges or a blue paint spot, floral I believe. Nothing I can make out. Today at work I found broken glass, which freaked me out to be fucking honest. I work in the fast food industry, and literally the only things we have with glass are coffee pots. These particular pieces, there were about 5 to 8, all seemingly went together. The glass was thin and cylindrical. I describe it as a glass straw. I asked my managers, co-workers about it, and no one knew anything about it. If it's worth noting, it was near our office entrance. Please note that I did not touch any of this glass. Plays into the next part. The position I was working was drive-through cashier. So all I'm really doing is taking orders over a headset and collecting money. I notice blood on my hand. So I'm like, what the fuck? Then immediately wash it off. The blood was all dry. It was on my right hand. The most was on the palm towards my wrist, and also a little on my thumb and pinky. It wasn't a ton of blood, but it was a lot to just be there without explanation. I had not touched any customers, nor had any cuts on me. I checked everything around me. I looked on change and bills in my register. Nothing. Then continued looking at my hand, examining for cuts. Nothing. I even looked in the mirror in the crew room to see if I had blood on my face or something and touched it. Nothing. It freaked me out a pretty good bit. 3. This is the first time something like this has happened to me, and it took a week to process that it had. Backstory. I live in one city and drive to another for work. About a 15-mile drive. One of the main roads I take is 10 miles long, and most of it runs through our local, huge park. as straight as an arrow with no hills or dips. I mean, there is no breaks in the tree line except for the campground entrance and the park entrance. Otherwise, it's just trees that come up to about 5 feet from the road edge. There have been a few accidents on this road. I've seen the spattering of crosses and wreaths at the sites. This story. I was driving home from work, still bright outside, but humidly hot, and I was kind of sleepy. New medicine was causing insomnia, so I wasn't getting much sleep. But I was awake while driving. No matter how tired I am, I wake right up behind the wheel. I started to drive down the main road of my trip home. I just passed the military housing and entered the park forest. There were only 3 cars on my side of the road. 4-lane road, 2 in each direction. Myself, a black Ford Explorer, and a grey Jeep with blue-green pinstripes. I was behind the Jeep. The Explorer behind me, but getting fast. The Jeep was going slow, but I couldn't pass until the Explorer went by. As soon as it passed, I put on my blinker, moved into the other lane, and passed the Jeep, before merging back into that lane. Wasn't going too fast. Pulled to the rear of the Explorer. In a moment, when I checked my mirror, the Jeep was gone. It hadn't pulled over to the side of the road where it would have been very visible. Hadn't crashed, spun out, or just stopped. It was gone. I knew I had seen it. I had been right behind it. There was no way it could have just disappeared, with thick forest all around us, without making some sort of big noise. And there were absolutely no roads for it to turn onto. I wasn't in shock or scared, just more of a, sensation. Now every time I drive down the road, I look for that Jeep or any place it could have gone, but find none. 4. What I'm about to share is something that happened at the end of a long journey of paranormal experiences that I went through that had a lot to do with using a Ouija board with 2 of my best friends. We also went to see a psychic a few times. I won't go into all of that on the post unless something is necessary as backstory for this single event, but not all of it. On to the experience. I'm very empathic. If I thought I had strong responses to other people's emotions before I heard that word and its meaning, once it started applying to paranormal experiences, both on the board and off, I was able to figure a lot of things out for myself. The psychic I saw told me that the left side of my body was empathic. Basically, everything I went through happened when I was living on the east coast of the US. I ended up meeting a guy online. We talked during the entire time everything happened. Then I moved halfway across the country to be with him. And we began living together immediately. The love we felt for each other then was intense. I was so excited to move, and the second I woke up, the day my flight was scheduled, I had completely forgotten every scary thing that happened. And I literally mean it was nowhere near the thoughts in my head. I was solely focused on him, and I had nothing but positive emotion. This lasted for about the first week, or week and a half that we were moved in together. Everything was great. I had no thoughts about what had happened before I got here. This one night, we were just laying together in bed. Nothing was happening. It was dark. It was late and quiet, and I was laying on his chest, rubbing his stomach with a smile on both of our faces. The amount of love I was feeling in that exact moment was at an all-time high. And that is why I was so alarmed when all of a sudden I felt an unshakable fit of rage coming from the doorway of our bedroom. It brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it. I just felt someone was there, watching us, and being so angry to see us together. Tears started pouring down my face. I jumped out of bed and turned on the lights. I grabbed the rosary I got as a gift from the psychic. In the past, when I would feel afraid, if I held onto it, it would instantly make me feel much better. And I was completely incoherent when he was asking me what was wrong for a good 5 minutes. I just kept staring at the doorway, crying hysterically. When I finally told him what I felt, he asked me if I needed to see a psychologist. Needless to say, he is a skeptic. That was over a year ago. I haven't really felt anything like it since, but I've always wondered what it was and why it happened. A few times when I was on the board, a spirit would come through, and it told me it didn't want me to move or be with my boyfriend. It says some things about not liking love. It said it had been with me since I was born, that he was in the hospital when I was born. I always took what spirits said on the board with a grain of salt because they are known to lie. But when this happened that night, my thoughts immediately went to this spirit. He was not one of the most prominent spirits that came through on the board, and I didn't think much of him until then. Could what he have told me been true? That he has followed me since birth? And if so, what is his purpose? What does it want? Or maybe I was mistaking his anger for a bad thing. And maybe he didn't want me with this guy because it would lead to bad things for me, pain and sadness or something. Maybe he wants to protect me, but I got the wrong impression. I have no idea. If anyone has any ideas, please tell me. I'm still with the same guy, and I wouldn't say things have gone the smoothest, and I have been hurt a lot by him. But not so badly that I think we won't get through it and be happy together. 5. In 1998, I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado in the U.S. Army. I had a friend named Frank that lived in the same barracks I did. Frank had a rough 18 years of life, being raised in the hoods of Washington, D.C. He had joined a gang called the Crips, and on this particular evening, he had lost a friend back home who was killed by a rival gang. Upset and distraught, he came to my room in the barracks, begging me if I could take him for a ride just to get away. Living in the barracks could be really boring, and it was even worse if you didn't have a vehicle to drive around in. I just happened to be one of the few that had a vehicle, so I was constantly being asked by people in the barracks to take them somewhere. Oftentimes, I was forced to tell people no, because if you always said yes, people would constantly be at your door, trying to borrow your vehicle or give them a ride. This evening, I really felt empathy for Frank and his loss. I remember him telling me, "Let's go to the Gold Camp Road." The Gold Camp Road was once an old railroad that led up into the mountains above Colorado Springs. The railroad was then converted into a road for tourism and led into the front mountain ranges. The road had a history of being very haunted, especially the railroad tunnels on the road that literally go through the mountains. I agreed to give Frank a ride and told him I would come to his room in a few minutes. I quickly put on a light jacket, some running shoes, and a light pair of sport pants. I remember before leaving, the TV in my room was on, and a meteorologist was giving a stern warning not to go into the mountains this evening due to a low front moving in from the northwest, causing wind chill temperatures 25 below zero with blizzard-like conditions. Being a 19-year-old fit soldier, I thought I could take on the world, and there was no way a blizzard was going to destroy my plans. I met up with Frank, and as we were walking to my tiny two-wheel drive Chevy S10 pickup truck, the cold north wind was already ripping through my jacket like razor-sharp knives, chilling me to the bone. The Gold Camp Road was about a 20-minute drive off post, and we had no issues getting there other than a few wind gusts that tried to blow my little truck off course. The Gold Camp, despite having the creepy ghost stories and the old scary railroad tunnels, also had some awesome picturesque overlooks. My favorite one was near the top of the highest point of the Gold Camp, which not only allows you to see most of the Colorado Springs, but also allows you to see the winding Gold Camp Road for a couple miles either direction, Me and Frank decided to stop there and burn down a pack of cigarettes, and just lay back and chill, taking in the beauty of the city below. After sitting there for about 30 minutes with the heater on full blast, the night had came on suddenly, and we started to notice a few small snowflakes whipping around in the breeze. Those little flakes should have been my hint to get out of Dodge, but we decided to stay for a few more smokes before heading back down the mountain and heading to post. Suddenly, a few snowflakes started becoming millions, and in no time the small gravel parking lot literally started getting covered with a blanket of snow. The gravel parking lot was very small, and it was on a slight incline, and pulling out literally almost put you in the ditch across the road. When I put my truck in reverse, I accidentally popped the clutch, causing my wheels to lose their traction, and the back wheels of my truck went into the small ditch. Sure enough, when I put my truck into first gear, the truck didn't have enough power to push me out of the ditch, and I was stuck. It was at this point I noticed my fuel gauge was on empty. That's just great, I thought. Frank had the idea of trying to rock the truck while the other one pushed. I remember stepping out of the truck, and my bare hands immediately started freezing. I am a very big man, and I tried with all my might to get my truck wheels to get out of the ditch, while Frank rocked the truck, and the wheels at this point had dug deeper in the icy mud. We both tried and tried, but we couldn't get the wheels out of the ditch. Gold Camp Road is often very busy, but on this night, there wasn't anyone stupid enough to go up in the mountains, except some stupid, hormone-filled young soldiers that thought they could take on the world. After 20 minutes of pushing and trying to get my truck out, panic started to set in, as I knew my truck was going to run out of gas and we would freeze to death. I remember as I was pushing, I said a little prayer to myself, "Please God, don't let me die up here." Immediately, as I had thought those words of that prayer, I heard a truck door slam, and this little old man was standing there with a friendly grin on his face. It was as if he appeared out of nowhere. I remember Frank was just as perplexed as I was, as we were on the highest point of the road, and we didn't see any car lights, either direction for miles. This man literally had a look kind of like Santa Claus, a chubby frame, a flowing white beard, and long white-colored hair. The man seemed to have a cheerful and happy demeanor, with literally no care in the world. "Oh my, that really is bad indeed," he said. "I tell you what, young man, just get back in your truck and get warm, and I will get you out." Puzzled, I replied, "Sir, not to be rude, but I'm a big guy and I couldn't get it to budge, so I doubt if you will be able." Now, young man, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could move this mountain." What happened next puzzles me to this day. This little chubby man literally picked the back end of my truck up off the ground and placed both wheels on the road. Did you just see that, man? He picked the truck up out of the ditch. Frank replied with a look of both fear and confusion. Relieved and happy, I quickly grabbed my wallet to give the man a few dollars for the trouble. "I don't need your money. I have no use for it. If you drive that way, just take your time and you will make it to the gas station," he replied with a grin. I looked down a moment at the fuel gauge, and then I replied, "Well, thanks again." At that moment, when I looked up to thank him again for the help, he literally vanished in thin air. There was no old man, and there was no truck. He was just gone. Fearful that maybe he slid off the side of the mountain, me and Frank looked around in the darkness in both directions of the road, and all we saw was snowflakes dancing around in the air. I took his advice and drove slowly down the mountain and made it to the gas station just as the old man had predicted. When me and Frank were traveling back to post that night, we got to thinking about what just happened. For one thing, The old man not only had a warm personality, but his body seemed to radiate heat because when he was near me outside, I didn't feel the cold air of the blizzard. Secondly, how did he know my truck was out of gas? I never told him I was out of gas. The last odd thing about the encounter, other than his fast appearance and disappearance, was the way he told us to travel was the opposite way he would have came based on the position of his truck. The only explanation I can think of all these years later was the stranger in the storm was an angel sent by God to protect us, so many miles away from home. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, Episode 8, which is a day late. Many thanks go to all the individuals who allowed their stories to be used in this video. I am so very grateful to all of you. If you hadn't said yes at the last moment, there'd be no paranormal video this week. I'd still be struggling trying to get stories for it. So many thanks to all of you. Good bunch this week, I think. Well, they aren't always good. I always try and pick the best ones possible. But I was very intrigued by the angelic Santa in the last story. And with that, I think I've earned the weekend off. Not to worry, there will still be uploads. What I've taken to doing the past couple of weeks, and I'll try and keep it going if I can, is trying to get all the audio recorded in advance. It generally means giving up an entire night and having a sore throat the next day, but it's worth it in the end because it gives me plenty of time to focus on little tasks that tend to get neglected, or I tend to use, I have to make a video as an excuse not to do them, That way, if it's all done ahead of time, I have no excuses. And on that note, I'm going to wish you all a good weekend. Whatever your plans may be, if you have any at all. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.